The moment it all shifted was in the middle of what should have been a normal Thursday. I had come home early from a vendor meeting that got canceled last minute, which was rare for my job. I handle setups for major trade shows and corporate events, and the schedule doesn't usually allow surprise time off. But that day, I walked into my house at 2:17 p.m. The house was too quiet, which was strange because Emily works remotely on Thursdays. We've got a little office upstairs she set up all cute with fairy lights and a vintage desk she found on Facebook Marketplace. Normally, she's on Zoom calls, always bouncing between branding meetings and whatever deadlines she's got going on. But the silence when I opened the door was thick, almost like the house was holding its breath. I set my keys down quietly and didn't call out. Something just told me to wait. At first, I thought maybe she was in the bathroom or maybe napping on the couch. I tiptoed past the living room, and as I hit the first step of the stairs, I heard the creak of our back screen door. It was subtle, but I know that sound like I know my own name. That door only opens one way unless you unlock it from inside. I froze, ears locked on every creak and step that followed. Then I heard her voice, low, half laughing, half whispering. Then another voice. A man's. My stomach twisted so fast it was like gravity flipped. I moved slowly, quietly, ducking to the side hallway where I could peek through the crack in the kitchen doorway. She was standing there by the counter, barefoot, in that long gray t-shirt she always wears when she wants to feel comfortable, the one that hangs off one shoulder and makes her look like she just stepped out of a soft drink commercial. But what grabbed me by the throat wasn't the shirt or the posture. It was her hands. She was holding them against his chest like he was her safe place. He was taller than me, broad shoulders, wearing one of those tight workout shirts that clings to every muscle like it's painted on. I recognized him instantly, even though I'd only met him once at a neighborhood cleanup event a few weeks back. His name was Travis. He lived 3 houses down and volunteered to bring coffee for everyone. Real charming, real helpful, the kind of guy that made everyone like him too fast. Apparently, he made himself a little too comfortable in my house. I backed away like I just stepped on a nail. I didn't want to see anymore. I didn't want to know how far it had already gone. I went back out the front door, silent, like I'd never come home. I sat in my truck down the street and stared at my steering wheel for what felt like hours. I didn't cry, not then. I didn't even yell. My jaw clenched so tight my molars ached. I've seen a lot of betrayal in my line of work, people undercutting partners, coworkers stealing ideas, vendors screwing over clients, but nothing hit like seeing the person you trusted most treat your house, your kitchen, your whole life, like it was a casual stopover on a boring afternoon. That night, I didn't mention I came home early. She didn't mention anything unusual about her day either. We had tacos. She scrolled Instagram while I pretended to watch TV. At some point, she made some comment about how tired she was from all the meetings and kissed me on the cheek before heading up to bed early. I sat there on the couch for a long time after she went upstairs. I stared at the empty plate, the crumpled napkin, the way she left half her drink on the table like nothing in the world could shake her. I knew then this wasn't something that just happened. It wasn't a moment of weakness. You don't smile like that in someone's face unless you've convinced yourself they're never going to know. Or worse, that they won't do anything about it if they find out. The next day, I called in sick to a 2-day event setup. That's not something I do lightly. I lose money when I skip gigs. But I needed time. Time to figure out how deep this hole went, how many lies were buried in it, and how far she was willing to go before I said enough. I didn't follow her around. I didn't hack into her accounts or go digging through her phone. No, I didn't need any of that. Instead, I set up a GoPro. Not in the bedroom. Not even in the living room. That would have been expected. I installed it inside the detached garage, tucked behind a shelf of camping gear, pointing at the door she always used when she didn't want to drag groceries through the front. I told her I was reorganizing the garage to make space for a new tool bench. She didn't ask any questions. 3 days later, I got my answer. It was Monday around lunchtime when the footage hit my phone. I had it set to alert me if there was movement during work hours. I watched, breath stuck in my chest, as Travis pulled up in that black SUV of his. She opened the garage door like she'd done it 100 times. They exchanged a look, not nervous, not guilty, just comfortable. Familiar. She stepped into his arms like he was her favorite hoodie. They didn't even speak at first. Just held each other, forehead to forehead, like they were on the cover of some tragic romance novel. I shut off the video. That was enough. When I got home, she was already cooking dinner like it was any other night. She asked if I wanted to try the new pasta sauce she found at that overpriced organic market downtown. I nodded. Stirred the sauce. Kissed her shoulder. Played my role like a professional. "You're quiet," she said, looking up from chopping onions. "Just tired," I replied, which wasn't a lie. I was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of carrying a marriage she was obviously fine discarding whenever the door was closed. "You sure everything's okay?" I smiled. "Everything's fine." That night, while she slept, I didn't. I stayed up watching the footage on loop, trying to count the number of times she looked happy in his arms. Comparing it to the last time she looked at me like that. I couldn't remember. That hit harder than anything else. I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet. But I knew this: she had no idea that I was already 5 steps ahead. The next few days were about patience. I didn't say a word to her. I didn't change anything in my routine. I still kissed her goodbye in the morning, still responded to her text with the same tone I always used, and still came home pretending the house wasn't burning behind my eyes. She didn't suspect a thing. I watched her walk around the house like nothing was off. She played music when she cooked. She joked about coworkers. She even asked if I wanted to plan something for the weekend. I said sure. She smiled. I wanted to ask her if she smiled like that for him too. Instead, I nodded and offered to make her a drink. Every night, I reviewed the footage. She didn't bring him over again that week, but she texted him often. I knew because I installed software on the old iPad she used for recipes. She forgot it was synced to her phone. I didn't read every word. I didn't need to. A few messages were enough. Things like, "I missed you today," and "Let's not wait too long again." Then there was one with a picture of her lunch, with the caption, "Would have been better with you." I didn't recognize the plate. She didn't make it at home. That meant she saw him somewhere else. Not in the house, but out in public. That was bold, but not surprising anymore. She had moved past hiding it. That's what hit me the hardest. The part where she stopped caring if she was caught. Friday afternoon, I got home early again. I didn't go inside. I stayed in the backyard and listened. Sure enough, the back screen door clicked open at 3:14 p.m. I stayed out of view behind the fence. I heard them laughing. His voice was low, like he was trying not to be heard. Hers wasn't. She didn't lower her tone for him. She talked like she owned the place. After a few minutes, they went quiet. Then I heard the sound of a chair sliding, followed by the dull thump of something hitting the kitchen table. It wasn't hard to guess. I stayed there another 10 minutes, then walked around the block and came through the front door like I just got home. She was at the stove again, this time making something that smelled like curry. Her hair was still damp from a quick rinse. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and asked how my day was. I said it was fine. She didn't flinch. She didn't look nervous. If she was shaken by the idea that I might have walked in during her little meetup, she didn't show it. That meant she was confident he left before I came in. I checked the footage later. He left 5 minutes before I walked through the door. She had planned it that close. She timed it like she'd done it before. I sat through dinner like nothing had happened. She asked me about a trip we had planned for next month. I lied and said I was thinking about canceling. She looked confused and a little disappointed but didn't push it. I asked her if she was happy. Just like that, right in the middle of dinner. She blinked and said, "Of course." I didn't respond. I just kept eating. She asked why I looked serious. I told her I was just tired. She nodded. We finished the meal in silence. Later that night, I brought the iPad into the bedroom and placed it on the nightstand. I opened the messages and scrolled to the most recent one she sent him. She was in the bathroom brushing her teeth. I tilted the screen so it faced the door and left it open on the message where she said she wanted to spend the entire next weekend with him, away from town, just the two of them. Then I got into bed and waited. When she came out and saw the iPad, her steps slowed. She froze halfway between the door and the bed. I didn't say anything. I didn't even look at her. I just laid there like I didn't care anymore, because honestly, I wasn't sure I did. Not in the way I used to. Not in the way that made me want to save any of this. She stood there for almost a full minute, not moving, not breathing. Then she picked it up and closed it slowly, like it might explode. She didn't say a word. She just turned around, walked back out of the room, and I heard the guest bedroom door click shut. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. The silence said more than any conversation would have. I turned off the light and stared at the ceiling. My heart wasn't racing. My thoughts weren't tangled. For the first time since I found out, I felt clear. I wasn't confused. I wasn't wondering why anymore. I had all the answers I needed. She loved him enough to bring him into our house. That was enough for me to stop pretending. She didn't come back to our room that night. The next morning, I woke up to an empty bed. No sign of her anywhere in the house. The guest room door was closed, and I didn't bother knocking. I knew she was awake. I made coffee like I always did, poured mine, left hers untouched. I didn't eat breakfast. My appetite hadn't returned in weeks. I sat at the kitchen table and waited. It took almost an hour before I heard the door creak open and her steps coming down the hallway. She stopped at the kitchen entrance, wearing an oversized sweater and leggings, her hair tied up like she hadn't slept much. She looked at me, not sure if she was supposed to speak first. I didn't move. I just stared at her and waited. Finally, she sat across from me and folded her hands on the table. Her eyes scanned the room like she was looking for a place to start. I gave her nothing. No questions, no opening. I let her feel the weight of the silence, the same kind of silence she'd created every time she walked past me to sneak messages to him in the other room. She took a deep breath. I guess I don't need to ask how much you've seen. I said, you don't. She nodded, swallowed hard, and looked down at her hands. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. At first, it was just conversations. You were busy, always working, always tired. He made me feel seen. I clenched my jaw, not because I was surprised, but because hearing her say it so casually made me realize how much she had convinced herself it was justified. Like I had somehow left a door open for her to crawl through. I stared at her. You brought him into our home. She flinched like I slapped her. I know. I didn't plan to. That just happened. It was stupid. I wasn't thinking straight. No, you were thinking clearly. You just didn't care. That's not true, she said quickly, eyes wide. I cared. I care. I still do. Then why him? Her face twisted into something between guilt and frustration. Because he was there. Because he listened. Because he didn't make me feel like I was a task on your to-do list. I leaned forward. You think I was cold? That I didn't care? I worked to keep us afloat. You had the freedom to change jobs, explore hobbies, take time off, and I never complained. You took that and gave it to someone who brings coffee to neighborhood cleanups. She sat back in her chair, crossing her arms. It wasn't about him being better. He's not. You know that. No, I don't know anything anymore, I said, my voice steady but louder now. Because you took every part of what we built and handed it to someone else while looking me in the face every day like everything was fine. There was a long pause. She didn't interrupt. She just sat there breathing, eyes red, but no tears. She was past crying. Or maybe she didn't think this was worth crying over anymore. I was going to end it, she said quietly. I had already decided. I didn't know how to tell you. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. You were going to end it? What part? The affair or our marriage? She didn't answer. Right? I said, leaning back. So what now? You want to fix it? Keep pretending this was just a mistake and not a choice you made every day for weeks. She hesitated. I don't know. I don't know what you want from me. I want you to stop talking to him. I want you to stop lying. I want you to admit that this didn't just happen. You made time for it. You protected it. You chose it over me. Tears started to form in her eyes, but I didn't care. She needed to hear it all. She needed to understand that her little fantasy had consequences, that there was no quiet reset button waiting after the credits rolled. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweater and looked at me, her voice cracking. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I messed everything up. I just didn't expect it to go this far. That's the problem, I said. You only regret it because you got caught. She didn't respond. She sat there, finally quiet. No more excuses. No more soft attempts at sympathy. Just silence. And that was the most honest thing that had passed between us in months. After a few minutes, she stood up and walked out of the kitchen. I didn't stop her. I didn't follow. She went back into the guest room, and I heard the door click shut again. I sat at the table for a long time, watching the coffee go cold, wondering how someone you used to trust with your entire life could stare you in the eye and still not admit the truth out loud. I didn't speak to her for 2 days after that conversation in the kitchen. I didn't ask where she was going when she left the house, didn't care if she ate, didn't ask if she was coming back at night. I needed the time for myself, not to calm down, not to process, but to think clearly about what I was going to do. I wasn't interested in yelling or throwing her stuff out on the lawn. I didn't want to break things or post some attention-seeking story online. I wanted her to feel it. I wanted it to hit her where it would stay for a long time, not just a temporary embarrassment or a few tears. I knew exactly how to do that, because I knew her better than anyone. And I also knew who she cared about impressing. She had built her whole image on being the supportive wife, the one who kept everything under control. Everyone around us believed we were solid because she played that part so well. I kept my circle small, but she was the kind to smile at strangers and make them feel like they were part of her world. Neighbors loved her. Her coworkers looked up to her. Her parents thought she was flawless. And it was all a mask. That was the first part one wanted to rip off. I started with Travis. I didn't tell him I knew. I didn't message him directly. I sent an email to his job. He worked for a property management company that handled rental homes across the city. I drafted a short, polite message to the regional manager, attached screenshots from the camera footage in my garage, added a timestamp, and included one line. Thought you should know what one of your employees is doing on company time in someone else's home. Without permission. That was it. No rant, no accusations. Just evidence and a sentence. 2 days later, he was fired. She found out before I even had to say anything. I heard her on the phone in the other room, asking him what happened, her voice low and panicked. She didn't confront me. She didn't even ask if I was involved. That told me everything. She knew it was me. She knew I wasn't bluffing, and now she realized I wasn't going to stop there. Next came the people closest to her, the ones she worked so hard to keep impressed. Her parents lived 3 hours away, and we only saw them every few months, but she called her mom every Sunday. That Sunday, I made sure I was in the room while she made the call. She was already tense, probably dreading it, probably wondering what I'd say if I decided to open my mouth. I didn't even have to. Mom, she said, trying to sound normal. I need to tell you something before you hear it from someone else. I sat back and listened as she confessed. She tried to keep it mild, saying she had made a mistake and was trying to fix it. I heard the tone in her mom's voice change within seconds. Then came the scolding. Her mom had always liked me. She thought I was the calm one, the one who kept things grounded. When she found out about the affair, she didn't just get angry, she got disappointed. She told her daughter she was reckless and selfish. She didn't yell, but her voice carried weight. I could see it hit. After the call ended, she sat on the couch in silence for over an hour. I wasn't finished. I printed out the pictures I had taken from the video footage, put them in an envelope, and delivered it to the homeowner association board anonymously. She had recently joined the board to improve her standing in the neighborhood. They had no idea what was happening behind her doors. I included a brief message that said, thought the board should know what one of its members is doing in the neighborhood president's garage. That was enough. She was removed from her position within the week. No questions. No meeting. Just a letter in the mail informing her that her services were no longer needed. By now, she had stopped talking to me altogether. She barely made eye contact. She walked around the house like a ghost, quietly going through motions, probably wondering when the next hammer would drop. I didn't say much. I just kept living in the house like it was mine, and she was the guest who overstayed her welcome. I took over the kitchen, made plans with friends, started spending evenings out, always letting her wonder where I was. I wasn't seeing anyone, not yet, but I wanted her to think I might be. I wanted her to feel the same uncertainty she had dumped on me. I even made sure to run into Travis one more time. I went to the same grocery store he always used, waited by the self-checkout until I saw him walk in. When our eyes met, he froze. I walked right up to him. You knew she was married, I said. You knew, and you didn't care. He didn't respond. He looked around like he wanted to vanish. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't touch him. I leaned in close and said, I took your job, your reputation, and next I'll take whatever you try to rebuild. Stay away from both of us. You'll never get near my house again. He left his cart and walked out. That night, I came home, sat on the couch, turned on the TV, and watched her glance at me from the hallway. She didn't say a word. She knew something had changed for good. It happened on a Sunday night. She had barely spoken all weekend. I noticed she didn't even bother pretending to be part of the routine anymore. She wasn't making breakfast, wasn't asking if I needed anything, wasn't checking the mail or walking the dog like she used to. She moved around the house like someone waiting for permission to leave, and I wasn't going to give it to her. If she was staying, she was going to say it out loud. If she was leaving, I wanted to hear that too. I wasn't going to carry the silence anymore. So I sat down at the table with 2 mugs of coffee and waited. She walked past me once, paused, and then walked back like she finally decided to stop hiding. She sat down slowly, didn't touch the coffee. I looked her in the eyes and spoke first. We're not doing another week of this. You need to tell me what you want. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes dropped to the table. She rubbed her hands together, something she always did when she was nervous. Then she finally spoke, voice low. I don't know what to say. Say the truth, I replied. No filters. No half versions. Just speak like I'm someone who deserves to hear it without being handled. She nodded slowly and kept her gaze low. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need to say it. I didn't respond. I waited for more. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. She continued. I was selfish. I knew I was hurting you, and I kept doing it anyway. I told myself it wasn't that serious, that it would stop before it became real. But it got real. It got real the minute you let him in our house, I said. I know, she whispered, her voice barely holding together. That was the moment everything broke. Even I knew it. So why did you keep going? I was scared, she said. Not of getting caught. Of what it meant if I stopped. It was the first time in years I didn't feel invisible. You didn't do anything wrong. But I felt like I disappeared inside this routine we built. And I wanted to feel something different, something that reminded me I still mattered. You mattered, I said calmly, but you didn't want to be seen as who you were. You wanted to be seen as something else, someone else. And he gave you that. He gave you a version of yourself that didn't have to deal with reality. That's not love. That's escape. I didn't love him, she said quickly. I swear to you, I didn't. I know, I replied. Because if you did, you'd be with him right now. She looked at me then, really looked. I could tell she had been expecting anger, expecting me to raise my voice or throw something. Instead, I gave her calm honesty, and that hit her harder than anything else. I don't know what to do next, she said quietly. I don't know if we can come back from this. We can't, I said. Not like before. Her shoulders slumped. So that's it. No, I said. That's not it. But the version of us that existed before is gone. You took it apart piece by piece, and now you're asking if I can glue it back together. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to carry all of it. Then what are you going to do? I'm going to move forward, I said. That means we decide what we're doing. Are we splitting everything and going our own way? Or do we live in the same house pretending not to exist? I don't want to pretend, she said. But I also don't want to leave just yet. I want to fix this, if there's anything left to fix. There's nothing to fix, I said. There's only what we do next. We can either be honest and adult about it, or we can drag this out and make it worse. She nodded, quietly wiping her eyes. I'll move into the guest room until we figure out the details. If that's okay with you. That's fine, I said. We'll talk to a mediator. We don't need to turn this into war. She stood up, slowly like she was carrying something heavy. Before she left the room, she turned back. I know I ruined something good, she said. I just want you to know that I don't expect forgiveness, but I do regret every second of it. I believe you, I said. But regret doesn't undo the choices. She walked out, and I sat there with 2 mugs of coffee, one cold, one untouched, and no one else in the room to lie to. We didn't speak much after that Sunday. She stayed in the guest room, stuck to her side of the house, and we only communicated when it was necessary. Groceries, bills, house maintenance, those were the only topics that ever came up, and even then, the words were cold, short, and to the point. The woman I used to fall asleep next to now felt like a stranger staying in my house out of obligation. I stopped waiting for her to change, stopped hoping for some gesture that would show she truly wanted to repair the damage. What I saw instead was someone sitting in her own silence, hoping time would magically erase what she did. It wouldn't. I scheduled a meeting with a mediator the following week. I didn't tell her until everything was confirmed. I handed her the paperwork on a Tuesday morning right before I left for work. She looked at the folder, then looked at me like she wanted to say something, but I just nodded and walked out the door. That night, she told me she would go. No argument. No questions. That confirmed it for me. She had accepted this was the end, even if she didn't want to say it out loud. The mediation was clean. We didn't have kids, no tangled finances beyond the house and a joint account. We agreed to sell the house and split the profit. She would take her car. I'd keep mine. She wanted a couple of pieces of furniture, and I didn't argue. I wanted this to be done without dragging every memory through the dirt. We didn't sit next to each other during the meetings. She came in with her lawyer, sat down, signed what needed to be signed, and left as fast as she could. I stayed longer, just to be sure she was gone before I walked out. I didn't want to see her car again in the parking lot. That was the last thing I needed. On the day she moved out, I didn't stay home. I packed a bag, booked a room downtown, and left early in the morning. I didn't want to hear drawers opening or see boxes by the door. I didn't want to answer any final questions or listen to last-minute apologies. She didn't need my help. She had friends who showed up to move her stuff, and I made sure not to be there when they did. She texted me when she was done, just one line that said, "Everything's out. Key is on the counter." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. That night, I came home and walked through the house. It was empty in places that used to feel full. The pictures were gone from the walls. The living room looked bare without the rug she picked out. The shelves where she kept her cookbooks were cleared off. Even the bathroom smelled different. I stood in the doorway of what used to be the guest room and looked around. She had taken the bed, the side table, even the lamp. I felt nothing. Not relief, not sadness. Just stillness. I spent the next week putting things in order. I closed the joint account, changed the locks, cleaned the house top to bottom. I donated half the stuff we didn't split, got rid of anything that reminded me of her, and started fixing up the garage. I ordered a new couch, moved my desk into the front room, and started working from there instead of the kitchen table. I told my closest friends what happened, left out the messy details, and didn't bother correcting any rumors that started spreading. If people wanted to talk, let them. I had lived it. I didn't need anyone else's version. One afternoon, I ran into her at the grocery store. It had been over a month since she moved out. She was in the frozen food aisle, looking at something like she couldn't decide. She saw me before I saw her, and when I turned the corner and noticed her standing there, she gave me a small, awkward smile. I nodded. That was it. No conversation, no update. Just a quiet acknowledgement that we both existed in the same place for a brief second, then moved on. Later that night, I sat on the porch with a drink in my hand and looked at the street. Same trees, same neighbors, same air. But it didn't feel like it used to. And that was okay. I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. I wasn't expecting her to come back or for my phone to light up with some message asking for another chance. That part of my life was closed. What I had now was space. Space to move, space to think, space to finally focus on what I wanted next. I didn't win. She didn't lose. It wasn't about revenge or pride in the end. It was about getting out of a lie before it pulled me under completely. And now that it was over, I could breathe again. For the first time in a long time, I could wake up in the morning and not wonder where she was or what she was hiding. I was done pretending. I was free from the weight of carrying something she threw away a long time ago. And that was enough.